Welcome back to the U.S. Navy History Podcast. I am Dale, and I am joined by Christoph. Hey, dude.
Hello. Good to see you. And
It's good.
virtually. And everybody, I was going to say and everybody else, but it's an audio medium, so I can't really say good to see everybody because I'm not seeing. Anyway, good to be back.
Glad you're here.
Thanks. Good to meet you.
All right, so last time we started on World War I, and I realized that we wanted to do a little bit of a palate cleanser between, conflicts, especially with how heavy World War
Oh,
I
yeah.
is. And we'll probably do these every once in a while going through big old WW1 because it's going to be a long conflict.
All right.
Especially since I haven't decided how deep we're going to get into everything yet.
So, palate cleanser. Listener, this is news to me. So, what exactly are we going to be talking about?
I figured we'd talk about the most well-known name in the U.S. Navy.
The Enterprise?
The Enterprise. All of their
Manifestations?
manifestations, exactly. So we have 8 military vessels that were called Enterprise. There is a training facility called the USS Enterprise. There have been 5 other American ships called the Enterprise. There have been 4 spacecraft/aircraft called the Enterprise. And of course, if we want to really get into it even more, there's also the Star Trek Enterprise.
Yeah. Couple of Enterprises, from what I understand.
13 of
Wow,
those.
really?
Mm-hmm. If you want to get into the nitty gritty, meaning television show, movie,
right.
books, everything.
Okay. Well, let's stick with the military part, and then we'll see where we go from there.
That's where we're starting. Yes. So the very, very first Enterprise was the USS Enterprise, which was a Continental Army sloop of war. So she was acquired by capture on May 18th, 1775. She was the George before that.
Okay.
She was a sloop of war. She weighed 7 tons. Her main propulsion, I'm sure you can guess this.
Wind? Yes.
Sail. She was configured as a sloop in the sail configuration. She had a complement of 50 officers and enlisted men. She was armed with 12 4-pound guns and 10 swivel guns.
Wow.
She only had one commander her entire career as a U.S. naval vessel, and that was Colonel Benedict Arnold.
No kidding. So it started as a theft captained by a future trader.
Lawful capture.
Lawful capture, okay.
She was actually captured by Benedict Arnold, if you know your history.
Well, we both know that I don't. Glad you're here.
She served in the Battle of Quebec, the Battle of Valcourt Island, and the siege of Fort Ticonderoga. All right, so the Enterprise was originally a British supply sloop named George, built in St. John's in Quebec, Canada. May of 1775, a small American force under Colonel Benedict Arnold sailed up the Richelieu River on a boat that they actually captured called the Liberty. And at 0700 on May 18th, Arnold and 35 raiders captured the fort and shipyards at St. John's, which included the George. Now, the fun thing about this little raid, nobody got hurt.
Whoa. That's good.
There was another unlaunched schooner, the Royal Savage, and this one would be captured later. It wasn't done yet, so they're like, we're going to let them finish it, and we'll come back for it
That's
later.
crazy. I mean, you execute a raid. You don't take the incomplete ship, but you have plans to come back and raid the exact same place once the ship is done. That's those craftsmen must be very disappointed, I think.
I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
I mean, they still got a job. The
Well,
boat's
that's
still
true. Maybe they have more work.
Well, yeah, they just lost the George, so now they got to
That's
replace it.
true. It's like if you're going to steal a
No
car,
work.
steal an American car so you can enhance the American economy because the person that lost the car will buy another American car. See what I'm saying?
We're not going to.
This is theoretical, hypothetical.
Okay.
We're not suggesting this to anybody as a real advice.
We do not condone.
No, but lawful capture in wartime of ships. Yes, I think we're okay with that.
Okay. So Arnold with his guys, they were milling around for about 2 hours, and then they leave with the sloop, which they armed and renamed to the Enterprise. So the Enterprise was, at first, the most significant warship in the Lake Champlain Squadron. This squadron was charged with maintaining American control of the lake early in the war. And at times she acted as a flagship for Colonel Arnold.
What helps to designate what ship is the flagship? Is it the best or the fastest, or does it matter?
It is whatever the flag officer
Okay.
chooses. It just, a lot of times they would go for flashy or big, maybe wherever they thought would be the safest. Back during the World War I times, it was normally a battleship because they're the biggest, toughest boats on the sea.
That makes sense.
In a more modern sense, it would usually be an aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
Because aircraft carrier would be more equipped for command and control operations.
Oh, yeah. That's true. Okay.
And, it's big.
Yep. Projects
and
power for sure.
Yeah. And the Admiral's at sea cabin is really, really nice.
Does anybody use the Admiral's cabin when the Admiral is not aboard? Okay. That's it. That's what I thought. That was a test and you passed.
Oh,
You
I've passed.
certainly
What did I
did with
win?
flying colors. You win my respect.
Well, I thought I already had that, but okay.
It's an ongoing. It's like a re-upping a subscription of sorts. You've won it again.
And that sounds like just too much work.
Just keep doing your thing, and then you'll just keep getting it. It's not like you have to go into the field or out to sea and slay a dragon.
Okay.
All right. So,
All right. So control of Lake Champlain and the Hudson River would have enabled the British to cut off vital supply routes between New England and the other colonies. And it would have allowed British troops to cross and attack Albany. So on August 28th, 1775, the Enterprise and other boats embarked with more than 1,000 troops as part of the expedition against St. John's, Montreal, and Quebec. Though St. John's and Montreal were captured, Quebec had to be besieged. And then the arrival of strong British reinforcements faced the Americans to withdraw from Canada in the spring of 1776, at which point the Enterprise and the other boats sailed to Iliox in the Richelieu River, where they waited while Arnold directed the building of a fleet at Fort Ticonderoga and also at Whitehall, which used to be known as Skenesboro. That brings us to the Battle of Valcour Island. This happened on October 11th, 1776. Valcour Island, if you don't know, is near Plattsburgh, New York. And this is where Arnold was like, this is where I want to fight. Arnold, he chose the battle water.
The
Not ground,
yeah,
so it
yeah,
has to be water, right?
it's not battleground. I guess battle water. I'll go with that. I think we can coin that phrase here on this podcast.
Much of Arnold's fleet was sunk and damaged by nightfall. But he was able to slip out the remaining ships, which included the Enterprise, past the British fleet that night towards Fort Crown Point, at which a running battle starts for the next 2 days.
Whoa.
As a result of this, they lost pretty much their entire fleet except for 5 boats. The Enterprise and 4 others were finally able to escape to Crown Point, and then they were sailed on to Ticonderoga. Now, this was a tactical defeat, but it was a strategic victory.
Oh?
Yeah, they were able to disrupt the British invasion into New York.
Yeah.
Disrupted enough that...
Yeah, the Beatles didn't come
would
back
not be
until,
able
like,
to
what,
beat-
1963? So,
What?
oh, sorry, wrong British invasion. Continue.
63?
Yeah, that's when the Beatles came to New York.
Uh,
It's known as the British invasion. It's a
no.
era of
it
rock
happened
and roll.
the next year.
Okay. Yes, different. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I sometimes get my wires crossed, you know.
A little bit. But yeah, no, they stopped them so they couldn't do it before winter. So once winter
Yeah.
sets in, kind of hard to make war during winter during this time. So they used that winter to recruit and train troops. And on October 17th, 1777, under General Horatio Gates, they defeated the British in a decisive battle at Saratoga. This victory was a primary factor in bringing the alliance with France to fruition and getting the French Navy to come out and help.
That's cool. That's a very instrumental victory.
You know, unfortunately, this battle would be the downfall of the very first
Oh, no. Don't worry. We'll use the name many other times.
The Enterprise was assigned to convoy duty because they were evacuating Ticonderoga. But the force that the Americans were using was not able to be a match for the British fleet on Lake Champlain. The British captured 2 boats, and the Enterprise and 2 others were run aground on July 7th. And the Americans burned them to keep them out of British hands. So arson.
Yay. Happened a lot more back then. I've noticed our later episodes don't have as much arson.
That is true. At least not naval arson.
Right.
Harder to burn down a meth boat than it is a
I think that must be the key.
But yeah, that is the first Enterprise.
Nice. Well, I'm glad it didn't get renamed back to George, because if it was captured, they would have done that.
Very possible.
When do we see our next Enterprise? Oh, what's the next Enterprise we should pursue?
So the next Enterprise was the USS Enterprise.
What?
Yeah.
Nice.
All right. So the builder for this one was a guy named Henry Spencer. She cost around $16,240. She was launched in 1799. Let's see. She weighed approximately 135 tons. She was 84 feet 7 inches in length. Her beam was 22 feet 6 inches. She had a hold of 10 feet. She was rigged as a schooner. Her crew complement was 70 officers and enlisted. He was armed with 12 6-pound guns.
That's quite a lot.
She was refitted in 1811. She was then weighing 165 tons. They shortened her to 83 feet 6 inches. Her beam stayed the same at 22 feet 6 inches. Her hold was deepened to 11 feet 6 inches. And she was armed with 14 guns. Wow. Right. So a guy named Lieutenant John Shaw, he commissioned her on December 17th, 1799, during the Quasi-War. You remember who we were fighting?
No.
France.
What? They're so nice. Yeah,
Sometimes.
I guess history is fickle when it comes to...
Everybody's nice sometimes.
That's true.
So the Enterprise departed the Delaware Capes for the Caribbean to protect the USS merchantmen from the French privateers. On January 23rd, she recaptured a schooner named the Victory that was captured 5 days earlier by a privateer called the Sun. So they're like, that's ours, give it back.
Nice. Enterprise the Liberator. I like that.
Yeah. So the next day, she's like, I'm going to do this again. And she recaptured a brig, the Andreas Kagen, which was captured 6 days earlier by the privateer La Union. She left Caraco around the end of January in 1800, and she got, and then on February 3rd, she was ordered by Captain Truxton to sail home with messages.
All right.
There was no wireless at this time. You had to actually physically carry messages.
It's a lot more secure that way.
Takes a lot longer.
Yeah, well, that's the trade-off.
And big trade. So that was her first Caribbean tour. Her second one starts when she got to the West Indies on April 23rd of 1800, in which she has a brief battle with a Spanish packet that opened fire on her. But they broke off the fight when they realized that this is a neutral ship. This is the United States ship.
Oh. Well, how about that? Thanks, Spain.
Yeah. On May 5th, she captured a French 4-gun schooner. And on June 17th, she captured a privateer, La Cringe, off of Guadalupe. On July 9th, she captured another privateer, the L'Angle. And on July 23rd, she captured the Le Flambeau. The French suffered 4 killed and 29 wounded, while the Enterprise only had 2 wounded.
Nice. Man, this American-made ship sure is kicking a lot of butt.
Yeah. On August 13th, she saw the Washington under French control, and we're like, nah, we're getting that back. After that, she captured, she defeated the Le Pauline to get her back.
Thanks.
This was on September 7th. She captured the letter of Mark Lugger, Guadalupian. Then on October 24th, Captain Shaw was like, you know what, guys, I'm sick. I'm tired. I need to be relieved. So Captain Truxton, who was the station commander, was like, okay, you know what, dude? You've been kicking butt.
For
You do
sure.
need to rest.
Did he say that while they were in the Caribbean? That's
Yeah.
that's the place to rest.
Well, depends on whether he has to stay there to get rest and get all better, or whether they sent
Oh,
home.
right.
So First Lieutenant Andrew Starrett was appointed as captain, and he took command October 27th. On December 6th, she fought a evening engagement with a privateer lugger off of St. Bartholomew. It started about 1 league off of shore and ended close to shore. It only ended because she broke off because she was like, I don't know the makeup of that shore where all the reefs and everything is
Right.
like. So I'm not going to chase this French privateer.
That's smart.
The privateer was not in very good shape when the Enterprise broke off. The privateer had 20 dead, 30 wounded, and 2 of her masts were gone.
Whoa. That is about as bad as it can be.
She limped
Yeah.
in there, barely. On December 24th, the Enterprise captured a privateer schooner, the L'Amour de la Patrie.
Ooh. Nice.
So the rest of her Caribbean tour ended with 8 captured privateers, 11 liberated American vessels.
Wow.
And, because of this, the Navy was like, yeah, we're going to keep her after the war's done.
Yeah, I bet. What an effective ship. That was incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, because after the Quasi-War, the Navy only kept 14 boats.
All right.
So because of her,
Outstanding service.
yeah, she was kept.
Nice.
So now the Enterprise goes to the Mediterranean. She reached there on June 26, 1801. She was delayed a little bit because they looked at her and like, she needs new masts. So this had to be taken care of before she went out there. But she does finally reach Gibraltar, where she joins other warships of the U.S. kind in the First Barbary War.
Oh, nice. We're taking it to them.
So her first battle of this conflict came on August 1st, 1801, just west of Malta, where she defeated the 14-gun Tripolian Corsair Tripoli. This was a really, really fierce battle, but it also was very, very one-sided. The Enterprise was not damaged, but the pirate was severely damaged and limped back to port. I have a news story of this battle.
I do.
Okay, this was in the Washington City's National Intelligencer, and
That is a mouthful.
this was published November 18th, 1801. The title was Naval Victory. Yesterday, Captain Stewart, commander of the schooner Enterprise, part of the Mediterranean Squadron, arrived here with dispatches for the Secretary of the Navy. Captain Stewart is bearer of dispatches from Commodore Dale, a relation, which exhibit a detailed account of the proceedings and situation on the Mediterranean Squadron. On the 1st of August, the schooner Enterprise, commanded by Captain Stewart and carrying 12 6-pounders and 90 men, bound for Malta for a supply of water, fell in with a Tripolian cruiser, being a ship of 14 6-pounders, manned by 80 men. At this time, the Enterprise bore British colors. Captain Stewart interrogated the commander of the Tripolian on the object of his cruise. He replied that he came out to cruise after the Americans, and that he lamented that he had not come alongside of some of them. Captain Stewart, on his reply, hoisted American in the room of British colors and discharged a volley of musketry, which the Tripolian returned by a partial broadside. This was the commencement of a hard-fought action, which commenced at 0900 and continued for 3 hours. 3 times during the action, the Tripolian attempted to board the Enterprise and was as often repulsed with great slaughter, which was greatly increased by the effective aid afforded by the Marines. 3 times also, the Tripolian struck her colors and as often treacherously renewed the action. with the hope of disabling the crew of Captain Sterrett,
Oh.
which, as is usual when the enemy struck her colors, came on deck and exposed themselves, while they gave 3 cheers as a mark of victory. When, for the 3rd time, this treacherous attack was made, Captain Sterrett gave orders to sink the AAAN, on which a scene of ferocious combat ensued, until the enemy cried for mercy. Captain Sterrett, listening to the voice of humanity, even after such perfidous conduct, ordered the captain either to come himself or to send one of his officers on board the Enterprise. He was informed that the boat of the AAAN was so shattered as to be unfit for use. He asked what security there was that if he should send his men in his own boat, they would not be murdered. After numerous supplications, the boat was sent. The crew of the AAAN was discovered to be in the most deplorable state. Out of 80 men, 20 were killed and 30 wounded. Among the killed was the 2nd lieutenant and surgeon, and among the wounded were the captain and 1st lieutenant. And so derisive was the fire of the Enterprise that the AAAN was forced to be in most perilous condition, having received 18 shot between wind and water. When we compare this great slaughter with the fact that not a single individual of the crew of the Enterprise was in the least degree injured, we are lost in surprise at the uncommon good fortune which accompanied our seamen, and at the superior management of Captain Sterrett. All the officers and sailors manifested the truest spirit and sustained the greatest efforts during the engagement. All, therefore, are entitled to a conundrum for their valor and good conduct. The Marines, especially owing to their nearness to the vessels, which were within pistol shot of each other, were eminently useful. After administrating to their relief of the distress of the wounded AAANs and the wants of the crew, Captain Sterrett ordered the ship of the enemy to be completely dismantled. Her masts were accordingly all cut down, and her guns thrown overboard. The spar was raised, on which was fixed as a flag a tattered sail. So strong was the sensation of shame and indignation excited there that the Bey ordered the wounded captain to be mounted on a jackass and paraded through the streets as an object of public scorn, after which he received 500 whippings, lashes, or in their word, bastinidos. So thunderstruck were the AAANs at this event, and at the apprehended destruction of their whole marine force, that the sailors then employed at Tripoli on board of cruisers that were fitted out by the government all deserted them. Not a man could be procured to navigate them.
That was incredible. That was such an overwhelming and decisive victory. I'm stunned. But I mean, that's kind of what it takes, though, a lot of times to snuff it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the fact of the matter that they were treacherous enough to strike the colors, to lure them in, and to be able to cause them damage.
3 times.
The Captain Sterrett was so nice and saying the 4th time, okay, we're going to give this a go. Because after the 3rd time, he should have just sank them. He's like, no, I'm not falling for that.
Well, that's why I think the reporter was like, he was stunned, and it's like he heard the cry of humanity and was like, okay, you guys know you're dead, so.
So on February 3rd, 1802, the U.S. Congress resolved that Sterrett receives a commemorative sword, and the rest of the Enterprise crew received a month's pay.
Wow.
They got a month's pay bonus, and the captain got a pretty sword.
Well, he's probably doing all right.
So for the rest of this patrol, they were at Gibraltar on October 3rd and was ordered to return to Baltimore with messages for the Secretary of the Navy. While in port, the captain receives orders on November 17th to pay off and discharge the crew. He was advised that he would receive a furlough and replaced after he oversaw the ship's refitting. Master Commandant Silas Talbot was offered the command, but he was discharged on October 23rd under the Peace Establishment Act. So the Enterprise's next victories came in 1803 after just carrying messages back and forth for months. They also served as convoy duty for merchantmen and just general patrol duty in the Mediterranean. But on January 17th, she captured the Paulina, which was a Tunisian ship under charter to the Bashaw of Tripoli. Then on May 22nd, she ran a 30-ton boat ashore on the coast of Tripoli.
Whoa.
For the next month after that, the Enterprise, along with some other boats, cruised inshore and bombarded the coast, sending landing parties to destroy small enemy craft.
Wow. Enterprise wasn't messing around.
No. On November 12th, Stephen Decanter assumed command of the Enterprise. And then on December 23rd, the Enterprise joined with the frigate, the Constitution. And their mission was to capture the Tripolian Ketchko. They captured it and took it back to Syracuse. They refitted it and renamed her the Intrepid.
Oh, no kidding.
Decanter took command of the Intrepid because of her regional appearance. So it was easier to get her into Tripoli's harbor without raising suspicions.
Ah, sneaky.
And so they used her to capture, burn the frigate Philadelphia that the Tripolians had captured and anchored in the harbor. What's the word called? Where we always drink.
Arson.
I can't remember that word for some reason. Yeah, there we go. Arson.
I'm glad I could help. It's one thing I
Yeah.
know, it's the key word to drink.
Decanter and volunteers from Enterprise carried out this mission almost perfectly. They destroyed the frigate and deprived Tripoli of a powerful warship.
Nice.
The Enterprise then continued to patrol the Barbary Coast until July of 1804, when she joined the other ships of the squadron in general attacks on the city of Tripoli over the next several weeks. Enterprise then went to winter in Venice, Italy, where she was practically rebuilt by 1805 in May. She rejoined her squadron in July and resumed patrol and convoy duty until August of 1807. During that period, she fought a brief engagement off Gibraltar with a group of Spanish gunboats that attacked her, but she drove them off. The Enterprise finally comes back to the United States in late 1807 and cruised coastal waters until June 1809. Then she sailed to New York and stayed there for the next year. So she was on patrol for 7 years.
That's quite a long time.
A long time to be away from home. So she is repaired at the Washington Navy Yard and then recommissioned in April of 1811. At which point she sails for operations out of Savannah, Georgia, and Charleston, South Carolina. She then comes back to Washington on October 2nd, and she is now in a dry dock period for extensive repairs and modifications. When she sails on May 20th of 1812, she has now been re-rigged as a brig.
So what does that mean? Is it just a different type of ship?
It's a different type of ship. It's a two-masted ship and the rig, the sail configuration.
Oh, okay.
When she was first built as a schooner, not sure how many masts she had, but schooner typically has 2 to 3 masts, but the sailing, the rigging is much different. A schooner has fore and aft rigged on 2 or more masts, and in the case of a 2-masted schooner, the foremast generally being shorter than the main mast.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, when she has been re-rigged as a brig, it has 2 masts, which are both square rigged. So that would be more than what you would traditionally see in movies.
Okay. I do see movies, so I know what you mean.
Yeah. Yeah. So guess what happens after she gets back out on May 20th, 1812?
I'm guessing the British attack.
Yeah. The War of
Yes.
1812. So she cruised along the East Coast during the first year of hostilities, and on September 5th, 1813, she sighted and chased the brig, the Boxer. They opened fire on each other, and then it was a very closely fought, fierce fight, which ended the lives of both commanding officers. But the Enterprise does capture the Boxer, and they take her into Portland, Maine, where a funeral was held for the captain of the Enterprise, Lieutenant William Barrows, and the captain of the Boxer, Samuel Blake.
Really? That's nice.
Both of them were buried in the Eastern Cemetery in Portland near the grave of Commodore Edward. So after repairs in Portland, she sails in company with another brig, the Rattlesnake, for the Caribbean. Back to the Caribbean.
Yeah.
They both take 3 prizes before being separated by a heavily armed ship on February 25th in 1814. The Enterprise was actually compelled to jettison most of her guns to try to get away. She then reaches Wilmington, North Carolina on March 9th, and pretty much passed the remainder of the war off as a guard ship off of Charleston, South Carolina. So they made her into a floating battery.
Okay, makes sense.
So the Enterprise then serves one more short tour in the Mediterranean Squadron. This is between July and November of 1815. Then she cruised the northeastern seaboard until November of 1817. So up in the Maine area, Massachusetts, that New York. In 1818, she was under the command of Lieutenant Lawrence Kearney of the New Orleans Squadron, who evicted Jean Lafayette from Galveston.
Really?
From that time on, she sailed the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico as one of the founding vessels that became the West Indies Squadron in 1821.
Nice.
She was active in suppressing pirates, smugglers, and slavers. And doing this, she took 13 prizes. There was an attack on Cape Antonio, Cuba, in October of 1821 that resulted in the rescue of 3 vessels taken by pirates and the breaking up of an outlaw flotilla that was supposedly commanded by James D. Jeffers, a.k.a. Charles Gibbs.
That's quite a moniker. I'm going to go by Charles Gibbs, and it has nothing to do with my real name. I guess that's how your real AKAs go.
So she ended her career on July 9th, 1823, when she was stranded and broke up on Little Curaçao Island in the West Indies. Thankfully, there were no casualties.
Oh, that's good. That's a long service for that one ship. 1799 to what, 1817?
1799 to 1822.
Wow.
That was a heck of a life. 24
and
years.
Active, too. Like, lots of shooting.
All right. So, the next Enterprise, I bet you didn't know that was going to be the name.
I didn't.
This was in 1831.
All right.
She was built by the New York Navy Yard. Launched October 26, 1831. Commissioned December 15th, 1831. Decommissioned June 24th, 1844. She was a schooner. She displaced 194 long tons, or 197 tons. Her length was 88 feet. Her beam was 23 feet 6 inches. Her draft was 10 feet. Her propulsion, of course, was sail. She had a crew complement of 72 officers and enlisted. She was armed with 2 9-pound guns and 8 24-pound carronades.
Whoa.
There's just a little bit about her. That's why I'm including it with where our time
That's
is.
helpful.
She was launched, as I said, by the New York Navy Yard on October 26, 1831, and commissioned by Lieutenant S.W. Downing. She sailed on January 20th, 1832 for South America, where she patrolled the Brazil station, guarding the USS interests until April of 18. Then returned to New York and was repaired and refitted until July, when she went back to Brazil. 10 months later, she joined the sloop Peacock for a cruise to the Far East by way of Africa, India, and the East.
Wow, that is quite a. I'm just trying to imagine that sailing that distance. No canals yet, no Panama Canal, no Suez Canal. You're going around the tip of Africa. That's a long way.
There's no GPS. You're doing all the navigating by dead reckoning, and the stars and everything like that.
That's very impressive.
Yes. So continuing eastward, she pulled into Honolulu, Hawaii, in September of 1836. Then proceeded to the west coast of Mexico, arriving in Mazatlan on October 28th, 1830. She then cruised the west coast of South America until March of 1839, where she departed Chile to round the Horn and pulled in at Rio de Janeiro. Then she went on to Philadelphia, where she was inactivated on July 12th, 8. Why do I keep wanting to say 19?
I messed you up earlier in the episode. That's on me.
No, it's not. On July 12th, 1830. She was then recommissioned in November 29th of 1839, and on March 16th of 1840, sailed from New York for South America. After 4 years of protecting U.S. commerce on this station, she turned north for Hame. In 1843, Enterprise was encountered by a Chilean schooner, the Uncud, at Puerto Americano in the fjords and channels of Patagonia.
Nice.
The Chilean schooner thought that the Enterprise was engaging in contraband with the Yates family of local settlers of Chilean British commander John Williams Wilson.
Okay.
And they boarded her.
Really?
And forced her to leave. That is quite surprising in this day and age that the Enterprise didn't just sink them.
Why did she allow that?
Probably because they were actually commanded by a good person.
Yeah. Again, like the Battle of the Barbary Pirates, the fourth surrender.
Yeah. On June 20th of 1844, Enterprise enters the Boston Navy Yard, and 4 days later is decommissioned for the last time. She was then sold on October 28th, 1840. So that's the 1831 Enterprise.
Nice. Lots of South America trips.
Yeah, she didn't have as long as life as her predecessor, or as much
She
action.
did sail around the world also, which is pretty novel. Still, I think.
The U.S. Navy still does that stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
World tour. I think it's called a world tour.
That's good. I was thinking about how the U.S. Navy is currently protecting, like when you were talking about protecting U.S. interests or shipping lanes or whatever, I was like, yeah, that's right. It takes some power on the waves to make sure all that stuff flows. And I guess for a while it was the British, and now it's us. And I hope that continues, because I don't know who else would do it fairly. Right?
All right, so we're going to end it here. We will be back next time with more Enterprises.
Ooh.
There's a lot more Enterprises to go.
That's incredible. I'm excited.
So, yeah, yeah. So at the end of our episode, we'd like to honor one of our fallen heroes with the help of HeroCards.us. And today we are honoring David B. Barkley, Private David B. Barkley of the United States Army. His hometown was Laredo, Texas. He served with the U.S. Army Company A, 356th Infantry, 89th Division. He received the Medal of Honor, World War I Victory Medal. His date of sacrifice was November 9th, 1918. Killed in action in France. He was 19. Army Private David B. Barkley likely didn't know that World War I would end just 2 days after he volunteered for a treacherous mission. What he did know was that his unit needed reconnaissance that he could provide, so he didn't hesitate. He lost his life during that mission, but the bravery he showed earned him the Medal of Honor. Barkley was born March 31st, 1899 in Laredo, Texas. Parents Joseph and Antonia. Family moved to San Antonio in 1904 after his sister Amelia was born. According to the Texas State Cemetery website, Barkley's dad, who'd once been a soldier, abandoned the family when he was young. This forced Barkley to drop out of school at age 13 to find jobs to support his mother and sister. Barkley's mother was the daughter of Mexican immigrants, so for much of his life, he went by Barkley Cantu, which represented his father's surname and his mother's maiden name. But he changed it to just Barkley when he joined the Texas National Guard in 1917. The U.S. had joined World War I, and Barkley wanted to fight on the front. However, he knew he couldn't if the Army was aware of his Hispanic heritage. At that time, Army policy regulated non-white soldiers to non-combat support battalions. So Barkley kept his heritage quiet. He even instructed his mom not to use her surname in letters for fear they would find out and move him out of a combat role. Barkley was placed with Company A of the 356th Infantry, 89th Division, and sent to Europe with the American Expeditionary Forces in August of 1918.
Now you're, yeah.
University. In August of 1918, on November 9th, 1918, Barkley's unit was struck along the banks of the Meuse River near Poulenilly, France. Across the river, a well-fortified German army was bombarding them with artillery, as well as machine gun fire and bombs from airplanes. To break through the lines, they needed to find out the enemy's exact position, the depth of the river, and where American troops could cross easiest to strike. To do that, someone would need to cross the frigid river to do reconnaissance. Barkley, who was known as a strong swimmer as a child, immediately volunteered, even though the mission was treacherous and the chance of survival was slim. He and another volunteer, Army Private First Class Harold Johnson, prepared themselves as best they could before climbing into the icy river. Despite the cold and the threat of enemy patrol boats and gunfire, the pair made it across the Meuse. While on the opposite bank, they gleaned what they could about the enemy's position, then headed back across the river. Johnson completed the trek, but only just barely. He had to be pulled from the water after nearly freezing to death. Unfortunately, Barkley didn't survive. Before he could make it back to the American side of the river, he was seized by cramps and drowned. He was 19. 2 days later, the armistice went into effect and World War I was over. Neither man's effort was in vain, though. Barkley's family received notice in early February 1919 that he had earned the Medal of Honor. It was presented to Barkley's mother during a ceremony in San Antonio on February 17, 1919. Johnson also received the high honor for his effort in crossing the Meuse. Barkley was initially buried in France, but his remains were returned to the U.S. in 1921. He became the second person to lie in state at the Alamo. The first was Army Major General Frederick Funston, who earned the Medal of Honor during the Philippine insurrection before being buried at San Antonio National Cemetery. Barkley's state made sure to remember him and his sacrifice. In 1921, a San Antonio Elementary School was named after him. 20 years later, as the U.S. military began to prepare for its inevitable entry into World War II, Camp Barkley near Wichita Falls, Texas, was named in his honor. Private David B. Barkley, Cantu, we thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I have done way too much talking.
I
Take
think
us
you
to the next
did just the right amount. I feel edified and encouraged. Maybe I should name my car the Enterprise and add to it a long list of victories. I'm not going to mount any guns. Don't worry. It's not nothing like that.
Got the engine before. This only last time with
Right. So yes, taking us out. Thank you for listening. We really are happy to make this podcast, and we're glad that people listen to it. If you want to get a hold of us, if you want to let us know what you like or what you don't, or what you'd like to see, there's a couple of ways to do that. You can email us. It's usnavyhistorypodcast@gmail.com. We're also on X/Twitter or Twitter/X or just X or just Twitter, however you want to call it. USN History Pod. You can catch us there. And then we have a Discord. If you want to jump on that, you can find that in the show notes. Additionally, it would help us immensely if you took the time to rate and review us on your favorite podcast. I was going to say app, but whatever vehicle you use to listen to this podcast, rate us and add a comment to say, hey, 5 stars because Christoph's the best. Or, I'm just whatever, however you want to say it. But yeah, tell a friend, tell a coworker, and share a fact that you learned here with someone you know, and you'll pique their interest and go, where did you learn that? Well, let me tell you, the U.S. Navy History Podcast is where I learned it. All right, Dale.
Right. So with that, we're going to wish you guys fair winds and following seas. Bye-bye. All right, Kirsten, it's time for your
What?
flying.